So we're making a video today about 5 lies about COVID-19. And the first lie is, you've seen this already, things like numbers that aren't what they were projected to be, or numbers that were just hugely projected in the beginning that never really came about, that the numbers that are just consistent with other flu situations. Going further with that thought is the fudged numbers. That's the idea that the numbers themselves were just being fudged. They were just adding them all together, just easily. Mislabeling people that are dying from this and that and naming it COVID and putting this on death certificates. There have been numerous people within the medical community that have come out. And the reason I mentioned this as the first one is that it's because it is the foundational issue with this whole picture of everything that started 3 months ago related to this pandemic issue. As you know, if you got 2 beautiful houses, they both look the same. One of them's built on a foundation of rocks, it's solid. But the other one, it's just as beautiful, but it is sitting on a foundation of sand, so eventually it will crumble. A little light at the end of the tunnel there. And I just want to remind you that about these dissenting people within the medical community is, they're very brave souls to come out and tell the truth about these things. And so when you have a majority of people that are putting out information and it turns out to be false, then these people need to be applauded, because they're swimming upstream, they're swimming against the current, so to speak, and taking huge risks for themselves in order to, come out with just the facts. And so it's important to give them credit and to value them as far as the position that they take within this whole COVID-19 picture. They eventually have to face people that try to discredit them, and they usually try to discredit them not with facts, but they try to discredit their character. That's a real big clue there, folks. When you see minority voices coming out with dissenting opinions and putting themselves and their careers on the line in order to do it, the next thing you're going to see is people trying to discredit them. Personal level, biggest clue, biggest red flag right there. So the second thing is wearing masks. This is, of course, all of these are going to be related to the first one, because again, it's the foundation. You build a house on a foundation of sand. It doesn't matter what kind of 2x4s you put up, the roof, the wonderful, beautiful windows, great siding. None of that matters, because you're sitting on this foundation that's just sand. It's going to crumble. So the masks, same thing. It's part of that house on sand. And we've outlined on our videos doctors and other people that are just knowledgeable people, good people, that will give you good information, telling you how unnecessary masks are. Masks do not do the thing that people think that they do. Even here, we get on buses and we're not wearing our masks, and people just scatter. They just run for the hills, or the side of the bus, because they just have this false assumption that the fact that they're wearing a mask is going to keep them from catching anything, when in fact wearing a mask is for when you sneeze, cough, or what have you, when you're sick. That's the whole point here. This mask thing does not apply to people that are not sick. We made a video when this whole COVID thing came out, that we were one of the very first to make videos about the truth about and the facts about this pandemic. For people that aren't sick, wearing a mask makes no sense. And for people to be afraid of people that aren't sick just because they aren't wearing a mask is false. And so that's just another lie. place. Together with that mask thing goes the idea that was initially put out, which was then retracted, because that's just not, some things are just so obviously and flagrantly untrue that they just sink. They just sink to the bottom of the water, and they don't hold. Like, people that are not sick spreading diseases. That's just mind-boggling that anybody would ever believe such a thing. Shelter in place was a term that was actually replacing the initial word lockdown. Now think critical thinking. Why would those putting out these ideas want to change the name of something to make it sound more palatable? I mean, you haven't changed what it is, you've just changed it in name. It's like calling a thief a lifter or something, So yeah, shelter in place, lockdown, staying in your house, house arrest does not build immunity. This isn't my opinion. The doctors, dissenting doctors, other voices out there all telling you the same thing. It doesn't really help you to fight off anything at all. First of all, if you're not even sick, staying at home is silly. And then if you are sick, you should stay home. So that's the whole key. Going back to the very first issue, number one, that the whole premise was false. All 5 of these false premises are being applied to the majority of folks that are not sick. That's the whole foundation of this whole video. It's sheltering in place, house arrest, whatever you want to call it, does the complete opposite of, when your people are sitting here wiping down their groceries and wiping down and washing their hands is a good thing. We always have, for as long as I can remember, washed our hands every time we come home from being out and going places. That's a good thing to do. But, taking it to the ridiculous, locking people up at home for months at a time is just way overdone. You've got places like Sweden, it has come out. Some of these places, they have already, you've got long, drawn-out lockdowns over months and months. Some places are doing, and then yet you have states in the U.S. and countries where they never really lock down very hard at all, and they're already opening, and they're not suffering the huge scare tactic numbers of all these great numbers of people dying and all this kind of thing.
States that have allowed some reopening, like Governor DeSantis in Florida, have been pilloried and their cases are down. They have not had the massive outbreaks to begin with that places like New York City, which did a rigorous but late lockdown, they haven't been affected nearly as badly as states like New York. And these people now are mostly very, very quiet because all their predictions did not pan out. The lockdown was not necessary for Florida. It was not necessary for Georgia, at least at this late stage. And the facts and the numbers, the data, it's all proving their talking points wrong.
Instead, we still see liberal pundits and even liberal politicians criticizing what Florida and Georgia are doing. Florida, by the way, it's important to note that Georgia is seeing the same response because that makes Florida not an isolated incident. It makes it a pattern. Georgia's new cases declined by 12%. They're at their lowest hospitalization rate in a month.
Contact tracing, wow, huge. Contact tracing comes right along the heels of everything we're talking about, and that is the idea that you would volunteer to give authority to a political entity of some sort, whether it's a medical or non-governmental organization, CDC, the WHO, the this, the that, the hospitals, the government, whatever, giving somebody else authority. This is the same, in your life to tell you, okay, well, we're going to get this authority and we're going to do what we think is right with your life. That's what a lot of the privacy advocates fear most. And they are correct, because Say you have a heart attack and you have these do not resuscitate orders, you've heard of this, or if you go to a hospital a lot of times in emergency, they make you sign a form because they want to be sure that you give them authority to do whatever it is they need to do without any repercussion to them. And it's the same with, advanced do not resuscitate orders. So it's just giving the authority to the proper entity to do things to you. So again, all of these things comes down to consent. You're giving written consent, which is different than not giving consent. So, most people, if they're sick and they are used to relying on, medical entities such as hospitals or whatever, governments, whatever it is, institutions, and you may be one of those that wants to do that, which is perfectly fine. If you feel you need it and you want to give consent, that's great. Just like a resuscitate order or non-resuscitate order, hey, if I have a heart attack, I don't want to be resuscitated, or I do want to be resuscitated. If you get ill, violently ill, you want to go to the emergency room, yes, you want to sign that where you authorize them to do things to your body to try to keep you healthy. But for those that are not in those situations, they have absolutely zero need to be giving any kind of, foreign to them entity that they don't normally use, such as ourselves and other people, any kind of authority whatsoever to tell us what to do, to be on house arrest, wear masks when you're not sick, volunteer to give authority to governments to trace your whereabouts. So, but again, this is an issue of consent, and for those that want these kinds of things, great. But for those that don't have any need and don't want them, again, it comes down to personal choices and the liberty to choose for themselves without any kind of repercussion for not doing so. So when you hear things like, everybody needs to, we're not going to make this mandatory, this contact tracing, but we urge everyone to do it, okay, so that we can open the lockdown earlier. Okay, to me, that screams manipulation. That is manipulation. Manipulation of the masses, because the majority of the masses are not sick and they are not dying, as the doctors that have the dissenting opinions have been saying and screaming as loud as they can from the rooftops, okay? That's the whole idea here, is that the foundation that we started with trickles down to all these other issues, and that includes contact tracing. Don't need it, don't want it, and these lockdowns should have never lasted as long as they did, but here they are, and now you're being manipulated into believing that you need to do this other stuff. Oh, but don't worry, it's mandatory, and that way we can just, stop persecuting you with these house arrests. Number 5, so we're at number 5, we're almost finished, is I've kind of touched on it a little bit, and that is these truth tellers, whistleblowers, and people that have a character. They have a kind of character to them that says that they will stick their neck out and put their own career on the line and their life as they know it on the line, their reputation, let's say, because these people, they are doctors and they're respected people in their community. But here they are sticking their neck out, putting their reputation on the line in order to tell the truth. Usually this is not the behavior, of people, most people. Most people, the average person, the masses, don't engage in this kind of behavior. So you've got the other extreme of that, is that you've got the crooks, the corrupt people. They're always doing this because there's no honor among thieves. A thief doesn't think twice. It's what he does because he thinks he's going to get away with it, right? The idea here is that most people don't behave in this way. And so when you see people behaving this way, they are taking that risk to their reputation because they have it within themselves to help others. From whatever that comes from, whether it's inspired by their belief in God or what have you, or just a goodwill for humanity or whatever reason, and therefore it's something that they do as they see themselves as helping their fellow man. So when you consider this scenario of the lone wolf that wants to do this to help their fellow man and putting themselves at risk, and you see people that come around pretending to be purveyors of truth, discrediting these people, and I've mentioned it earlier, that's a red, to me, that confirms and solidifies the ideas that these dissenting voices are putting out. Because there is absolutely no reason to do such a thing other than because there's already plenty of voices out there pushing the narrative, right? So there's no shortage of them. I mean, we've already heard all that. What we want to do is hear the dissenting voices. So once we've heard the dissenting voices, now we know the facts. We don't need people coming around trying to discredit the minority dissent. That's silly. And when you see it, big red flag. All right, thanks for staying with me on this video. I hope that helps you have all of this information in one place. We haven't changed anything that we've been saying from the very first day this whole COVID picture broke out 3 months ago. We've been consistent all along about it. She came over and said something about coronavirus, and then she said something about watching TV. That's a clue. I'm not minimizing at all the fact that people are getting sick and people are dying. Why I'm saying what I'm saying is to separate the facts from the hysteria part. So there's two sections here. I'm not saying this thing doesn't spread, but with any contagious or infectious diseases, there's always the potential and the possibility, of spreading. I remind you that there's been many of these hysterias. And as we started focusing on building up our immune system, I was able to be around sick people and not get sick. And this got better and better through the years. That's just personal experience. There's always viruses that have not been discovered. So it isn't that the virus itself isn't new. Sure, you can say, oh, it's a new virus, but there are so many thousands and thousands, maybe millions of viruses that there's always going to be a new virus. Better to fortify your fortress so that your enemy can't come in, right? If you have a weak immune, if you do live in a polluted area, you should take extreme care to segregate yourself from sick people. There is more to know about something than, what you read in the headlines and what you see on sensationalist articles and news media and what's coming down from top-down information sources that don't have the credibility that you think they would. Thanks for staying with me on it. And if you like the video, you know what to do. Subscribe, notification bell, all the things everybody says you're supposed to do. And thanks for coming. Have a nice day.